Hi there, Minerva makers. It is Jo here today, and we are going to be making a pair of slippers, and it's going to be a sew along so that you can see all the components that bring them together. The pattern that I'm using is the Dhurata Davies Whisper slippers. There's two views here. There's a plain version that can be unisex, and there's another version that's got a little frill on. They basically have the same construction. You're just using different upper sole pieces to create either a folded front toe or a flat front toe. You can take your foot measurements for this pattern, so you don't need to know your foot size in continental or UK. You can use centimetres or inches, and the sizes are alphabetical, so it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they go from a 22 centimetre length foot up to a 28 centimetre length foot. And it also gives you the finished slipper length, so you maybe can compare them to some that you've already got. One of the best things about this pattern is that you can use a huge variety of fabric. So you can use some bits of fabric from your stash, you can use different bits for the upper and the lining and the sole. And I'm going to go through a few options at the end of today's video, because today I'm going to be making myself some sewing slippers. I've got the Minerva organic cotton, and I've chosen the sewing design. It's about the scale of it there, look, you can see. It's a really smooth cotton. It's got a little bit of structure and stability so that it will hold the shape. It won't just flop down and create a flat slipper. And you could make the whole slippers in this, or you can add a little contrast of lining. This is a Minerva Core range spot cotton. This one is from Rose and Hubble, and I'll list both of these products in the list below. You'll also need a few more other things to construct the shape of your slippers. So you'll need a piece of foam. You can get fusible foam, you can get sew-in foam. I'm using the sew-in foam because it's a little bit stronger and there's a method in the pattern for attaching it. This is what's going to give me the thickness on the sole of my slipper. Obviously you can change that up if you make your first pair and then you think you want to change them in some way, have them thicker, have them thinner. And you'll also need some quite substantial interfacing. So this one's quite thick, this one's a fusible. I haven't got much of it left because I've been cutting out, but I will list this in the products as well, because all of these things added together will give you the structure of your slippers. Today I'm wearing Shingle Path Viscose Challis. It's a really nice design. I sort of feel a bit like it's an animal print, like a giraffe, but not so much a shingle path. But I really like this design. I like the colour palette in it. And I've made the Harlow top from Stylark, but this one has short sleeves. Ordinarily it will have a bell sleeve. It's a really great pattern. It's got a lovely neckline and I like the sort of swing hem. Okay, well, no more chit chat needed. We can head straight over to the cutting table and cut out our whisper slippers. This is the pattern sheet from the pattern packet, and I don't normally trace off all of my patterns. I sort of make a decision based on how many times I think I'm going to make the garment, or if I'm going to make it for other people. But with slippers and lingerie stuff, actually, I particularly like to trace off the pieces because they're small, it's quick to trace them off. And with something like this that spans lots of age ranges and male and female and children or whatever, then I think it's a great idea to trace them off. So here I've traced off view B, and I know which size I've cut, which is size D, and I've added all the information from the pattern sheet to the piece, because this is the foam one and the interfacing one, but the outer one is slightly different. So this one is a little bit bigger because the foam is cut smaller. So I've made sure that when I'm cutting out, I'm going to be cutting out the right type of product. I've put the notches on too, because that will mean that I can bring my slippers together in construction, and any other details. I've also added the pattern piece number because that's referred to in the instructions. So the first thing to do is to trace off your correct pattern pieces for your size. I've got a few things to consider when I was cutting out. So I've got my Handicraft Heaven fabric. I need to decide where I want that. I want my frill to be in this little contrasting colour, and I want to think about what pattern or colour I want on the inside. So I've cut out 2 of the main fabric, and you need to make sure that you're cutting out a pair, 2 in lining fabric, and also I need 2 in a backing fabric. Now this can be any woven fabric because this is going to be inside the sole of the shoe, and I'm going to be attaching the foam to this piece. So I actually had in my bag making bits of material a little bit of melt and coating that I had left over from a coat project, and I've chosen it because it's just got a little bit more stabilization. You could just put another piece of the cotton in, but I just felt that this one would give the slippers a little bit more stability inside. So you could put a piece of any thick fabric in there. 2 main, 2 lining, 2 backing, and then you're going to continue to work through the cutting list. This is the upper of the slipper, this is the large upper piece of the slipper and the frill. And then we need to look at the stabilizing pieces. So these are slightly smaller than the outer pieces, and so you'll need a different piece. That's in my case piece number 6, and I'm going to need a foam piece, 2 of those opposites, and 4 pieces of interfacing, so 2 for this side and 2 for this side. Keep everything laid out so that, and have them laid out like you would be wearing them, so you can be definitely sure throughout your project that you're getting a left and right shoe. We've also got the same for our interfacing for our upper and small top pieces. Another product you can experiment with is a fusible fleece. So I've got to cut out of my upper foot piece 4 pieces of interfacing, and I've got a normal interfacing, and then I've gone for a piece of fusible fleece because that'll just pad out and give a little bit more structure and warmth to the top of my shoes. Done the same here as well, but you really are just required to cut out 4 pieces of interfacing. Just switched one of those out for a fusible fleece. Something to consider, and you might find after you've made your first piece you want to play around with some of the thicknesses and fabric types. Before you start your actual sewing, I recommend that you find on page 3 the key code colours for right side, wrong side, interface piece, foam piece, because that will help you to understand the illustrations. The illustrations are going to be tricky to understand if you don't know why they're coloured or greyed out the way they are. So just get familiar with that. If you want to, you can write that on some of the pattern pictures. This is what I do sometimes. On here I would write right side, wrong side, in I for interface, just to give me a few quick clues so I don't have to keep reading the words over and over again. Step 1 of the pattern is to add all of the stabilizers to each correct pattern piece. So you'll need to be making sure that you get it on the wrong side of the fabric, that you're not sticking your interface into the right side of the fabric, which won't happen for me because I've got a pattern fabric. But if you've got something plain, you need to make sure that you're definitely throughout the whole pattern making a left and a right slipper. Once you're cut out, you can then apply all of the matching interface pieces to each of your linings and outer pieces. I'm just experimenting with this fusible fleece as well. So I've got one set with the interfacing and one set with the fleece. We can start constructing our slippers. For view B, we are on step 2, so I'm going to be putting together the uppers of the slippers and adding the frill feature. These are the small upper pieces, and I've aligned them as the picture. And then I'm just going to put the pattern piece back on and mark which edge I'm going to take a little trim off, and also any other markings. As per the diagram, I'm just going to take a couple of millimetres off the lining pieces along that bottom edge, which I've already done. So now that when I put them together with the other colour, the lining will be a little bit smaller than the outer, and that means it will roll over and the lining won't be showing. You can use clips or pins here, whichever you prefer. You're going to sew with a straight stitch. I've got stitch length 2.5. It's just a little bit shorter and a little bit tighter, so the slippers will have some longevity once they're made. And the seam allowance for this whole pattern is 1 centimetre. Press your seam allowances towards the lining. In my case, the lining is the spotty fabric. And we're going to understitch through all the layers on the lining side. So you sew through the lining and through the seam allowances so that everything will peel away, and when it folds you won't get the lining peeping out. Once you've done that, you'll find that that really folds back nicely, and then you're going to match up the rest of the raw edges and pin in place. And then you're going to baste around there just to hold the layers together, and that will help the rest of your construction. We've only got a 1 centimetre seam allowance, so you need to make sure that you're basting within the seam allowance. Get the tip accurately pinned so it doesn't scissor off shape. Already I can feel that that fusible fleece is making a really nice spongy texture. I think that's going to be perfect for the uppers of my slippers. And next we can work on the trim. Take your trim piece and fold it wrong sides together so you're matching the raw edges, and pin those in place. Make sure you're quite accurate on the ends. And then we're going to add a gathering stitch. So I'm on a straight stitch, stitch length 5, and I'm taking 2 lines of gathering stitches, one about 0.5 centimetres from the edge and one just under 1 centimetre from the edge, but I can pull out the second one if it's exposed at the end. Next we're going to draw up those gathering threads so that we get a really neat trim, and we're going to spread out the gathers so that it matches the correct length of our upper slipper piece. Next you're going to take the upper slipper pieces, this is the upper large piece, and the toe is going to be at the top, and you're going to put a little mark 0.5 centimetres from this long curve. From the right side you'll have your stitch point here, and you'll have your markings, and you're going to put your frill onto the slippers with the end going to that 0.5 mark. So there's 0.5 centimetres here, and then the frill will start. You can adjust the gathers to fit the shape, but you're going to pin on the frill right sides to right side around the edge of the curve. If you need to let it out to accommodate the curve, you can do that too. Baste the frills in place so that there aren't any more pins, and then we're going to look for the dot that's on our pattern for the upper large piece. I marked mine with a little tailor's tack here, and we're going to line up the other half of the slipper front. It should go as far as the dot and up to the edge, and with right sides together going to pin those in place. Take the lining pieces and you're going to trim a few millimetres off this upper edge. Next, with right sides together, you're going to place the large upper lining on top of all of the pieces that you've constructed so far. You can either continue with pins, or you can now switch out for clips as you get more and more layers. Sew it with a straight stitch at a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then to get this to curve out, you're just going to clip to allow that curve to curve around. And you're also going to take out any visible gathering stitches. Okay, so you've got the uppers completed. You baste together the raw edges just to hold all of that lining in place. And your frill is exposed. And you can see that if you do it in a contrasting pattern or design of fabric, it really does make a beautiful feature. Our uppers are all complete. The next step of the instructions is to create the soles. So you're going to have a backing piece that's inside the lining and the outer of your slippers, and that will give you the structure so that the bottoms aren't all floppy. I'll show you how to put that together. That bit involves adding the piece of foam to the sole. Here are the backing sole pieces. So you've got the backing piece. Remember, I cut mine out of a felty fabric. And you've got your foam piece, and it goes on top, and you've got your seam allowance around the outside. That means that you won't be creating lots of bulk in the seam allowances by sewing through the foam. You can do this in a number of ways. So you can pin it in place, and we're going to zigzag the sponge sole to the backing fabric, or you can use a temporary glue. So this is Odif 501. It's a temporary spray adhesive, and you give it a shake. You can spray the back of your sole and stick it to your fabric. That will just hold it in place a little bit more accurately while you add your zigzag. If you do use the temporary glue spray, you need to do it outside because it's a bit smelly, and also the spray would spray all over your table and make your table sticky. You need to make sure you haven't got any wrinkles. But this piece is going to be on the inside of the 2 layers of lining and outer on the sole. These will be completely enclosed, so you won't see the zigzag stitching on the outside of your slippers, and you can make these as thick as you want. So if you want to add more than 1 layer of foam here, you could. By zigzagging the edge, it just presses down and compresses the foam on the edge. So now I can continue to have my 1 centimetre seam allowance. We've got all the components of the slippers, so now we need to put them together so that we can attach the sole to the upper of the slippers, and then they're ready to try on. Let's work on one slipper. So the next thing we're going to do is with our lining fabric. So that's the one that you want to have on the underside of your sole. You're going to put that one right side up on top. Now this one, you might be able to feel and hear the noise. That one has been coated with some Oddi coat. So I've made the bottom of my soles, this is the one that's going to be on the floor, I've coated it with some Oddi coat. It should give it a little bit more grip, and it will also stop it getting too dirty. I can give it a wipe clean. I have cured this and I've pressed it, so I could even put my slippers in the washing machine. Oddi coat gel is a gel that turns fabric from a woven poplin fabric into an oilcloth. You can put as many layers on as you want. Next, we're going to baste this on with a machine basting stitch within the seam allowance. Next, you're going to take the upper piece and you're going to match up the upper piece to the sole with the lining facing you. You'll have some markings down here which will show you where to take the edges of your slipper. Once you've basted around, then you've got all of the components together and they're not moving around. I'm just going to squash your slipper flat, and with your remaining sole piece, you're going to put that right sides together and match up all of the notches. Just take a little bit of manipulation now. You want to make sure that when you sew, you're not going to catch the frill in that seam allowance, that everything is tucked away. Clips are really good here now because you've got quite a few layers and you want everything to be lying flat. You will have a little bit of easing to do just around that toe end, so do that carefully so you don't have any puckers. Once it's sewn, you clip out around the curves, and then you're going to use the space you left for opening to turn your slipper out. And this can be a bit stiff because you've got all of those different layers, so just take your time to work each part of the slipper through the hole. Once you've turned your slipper out, you can just get into the point in the corner, and then you're going to hand sew the side here where you had your turning place. I've got that scratchier bottom which just protects the sole, got the frill, and it's making a really comfy cozy shape. When it's all sewn up, you have finished your slipper and it's time to make the second one. While making these slippers, I was having lots of ideas of different fabrics to use. In my head, I was thinking of little bits of this that I've got left over and little bits of that. So I just want to show you a few fabrics at the table that you could switch out for different parts of the slippers. For a plain pair, you could use a canvas, drill or twill. All of the heavyweight versions of those are ideal. It's a nice firm stiff fabric. You can embroider it, you can add iron-on motifs, you can make them for male or female. It's a pretty unisex pattern if you switch between view A and B. I used a piece of vegan wool coating, like a Melton wool, for the backing piece inside my slippers, but you could use it to make a warm cozy wool pair. You could make a really plush pair with velvet, maybe mixing in with a colour that's in your dressing gown. And then I had a few more alternative ideas. So if you've got pleather offcuts, they would make the good outer sole, so the piece that goes on the bottom of your slipper. You could use that, and then you could add a sock stop, which is a little latex rubber glue, and you can put little dots on the bottom so that your slippers aren't sliding around on the bottom. And I also thought about using fleece. A sort of polar fleece would be nice on the inside, or I've got some of this sheepskin fleece, which is absolutely lovely, and that would be very nice as the lining pieces on the inside here, or inside against your toes, especially if you're going to wear your slippers with bare feet. If you're not up for buying fabric at the moment, but you really like the look of the pattern, then you could also upcycle a pair of jeans. So this pair of jeans has already been cut into a pair of shorts, but I've kept the leg piece for patching. And you can definitely, out of a whole pair of jeans, get all of the pattern pieces for the inner and the outer. And actually it wouldn't matter, it would look quite funky if you use lots of different types of denim and match them on your slippers. You could have a darker piece here, lighter piece here, and it would be quite firm and sturdy on the bottom. So just because I've made mine out of poplin, there are a lot of different fabrics you could try, and you could also use lots of your poplin and quilting fabrics as the outer fabric if you want something with a print. I have really enjoyed making these slippers today. It's been really good fun, and I've already started to think about who I might make my next pair for. They'd be great for people going on holiday, for anybody who sews, obviously, for people who maybe are in hospital and just want something comfortable on their feet to walk for short distances. They're great if you're going on a spa retreat. If you've got a bridal party, it would be absolutely fantastic if everybody had matching slippers for getting ready for the wedding party. You can really switch up the pattern by adding different things that make them waterproof, that give them grip, different fabrics that give them higher insulation. It really is a great pattern to have a lot of fun with. I hope you have enjoyed today, and we would love to see you over on our website. So you can make a free account there, share your makes and tag your photographs and your patterns and fabrics and give a little description of what you've been up to. It's a real inspiration to the Minerva makers and all of our sewing community. You can also join the craft club over there, where you will receive discounts and offers throughout the year. If you want more sewing content, then you can click and subscribe here at the YouTube channel, or you can watch all of our videos over on our website. It's been great to see you. Do take care, and we'll see you next time.